operations. We taught people how to use cellos.
The music world dimmed to a whisper with the passing of Brian Wilson, the visionary architect behind the Beach Boys. He was 82. His family's short, gentle message asked only for privacy, but it left a heavy silence in its wake. No details, no explanation. For days, fans were left to mourn and wonder, until Brian's daughter, Carney Wilson, shared the painful truth. Brian had spent his final year drifting through a fog of total memory loss, a devastating decline triggered after the death of his wife and anchor, Melinda Ledbetter. Wheelchair-bound and living under guardianship, he moved through his last months barely aware of the world around him. A childhood marked by pain and genius. Born in 1942 in Inglewood, California, Brian Wilson did not grow up in the sun-soaked world. His music later painted his father, Murray Wilson, was both ambitious and abusive, pushing Brian and his brothers with a harshness that left deep emotional scars and left Brian deaf in one ear. Music became his refuge. Obsessed with harmony, Brian taught himself composition, eventually forming what would become one of America's most iconic bands. While the Beach Boys sang about paradise and freedom, Brian battled a constant undercurrent of fear, anxiety, and self-doubt. Even then, his brilliance was unmistakable. The rise and breakdown of a visionary. By his early 20s, Brian was already being hailed as one of the most gifted young minds in pop music. Early hits like Surfin' USA and California Girls turned the Beach Boys into cultural symbols. But inside, something was unraveling. A devastating panic attack in 1964 forced him to quit touring. Retreating into the studio, he poured his soul into Pet Sounds. Inspired by the Beatles' Rubber Soul, it was unlike anything American pop had ever heard. Layered, emotional, and daring. Although the album was initially misunderstood, it later came to be recognized as a masterpiece. But the lukewarm reception at the time shattered Brian's confidence. His mental health spiraled, and his dream project, Smile, collapsed under the combined weight of pressure, paranoia, and inner turmoil. Manipulation and the fight for freedom. The 1970s were marked by isolation and collapse. Brian withdrew from public life, sinking into addiction, depression, and compulsive behaviors that imprisoned him for years. Desperate, his family brought in psychologist Eugene Landy, whose unorthodox methods began with promise but soon turned predatory. Landy inserted himself into every corner of Brian's life. Creative, financial, personal. Only a court order in 1991 finally severed Landy's control. But the damage lingered, leaving Brian emotionally fragile and lost love, recovery, and the last chapter. Brian's redemption came through Melinda Ledbetter, the woman who grounded him when the world seemed too overwhelming. With her support, he returned to music, completing Smile in 2004 and earning long-denied praise. For years, he toured, created, and slowly repaired bonds with fans and family. But Melinda's death in 2024 shattered him. Grief and neurological decline overtook him, and he spent his last year fading into silence. A legacy that will never fade. Even with his painful final chapter, Brian Wilson's legacy is untouchable. Pet Sounds is considered one of the greatest albums in history. Songs like God Only Knows shaped generations of musicians. In her tribute, Carney Wilson described a father who fought unimaginable battles, yet still created beauty that resonated across the world. Brian Wilson's life was never simple, but his music remains eternal.